Go. All right. Welcome everybody to the Camp Leo connected internet thing that we're doing now. This is the panel where diabetics, such as myself, my name is Nicholas Webb, will answer questions from the audience who may want to understand what it's like as a person living with diabetes. You know, these people asking questions are going to be somebody who is responsible or helps take care or support somebody with diabetes. So yeah, I'm Nick Webb. I've been doing this diabetes thing for 31 years. So that's cool. Somebody else go.
I'll go. Hi, my name's Alex. I've been a type 1. I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary, so I'm actually going to be eliciting any suggestions for crazy things to do on my 10-year anniversary, if anyone has any suggestions later on. I'm also a former board member of Connected before the merger. Yeah, that's about it. Hello.
Hi. I guess I'll go. I'm Maya. I have type 1 and I've had it for over 34 years now. Yep. I think this is it.
Cool. And supporters, a quick intro. It's up to you guys, I guess, if you want to talk or not. Or folks.
Sure, I'll go. My name's Chris Donato. Nice to meet you. My wife's just coming up on her, I think her second anniversary soon. Yeah, so fairly new to this. And that's really it about me.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so the way this is going to work. Oh, wait, cool, Lauren, yes, speak up.
You're on mute. Lauren,
are we the only? Oh. Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry, life is chaotic. I was putting the baby to sleep, and I'm walking the dog, so that Max, my husband, who has type 1, can like be in his breakout session.
When
yeah,
did you have a kid?
This year, like right as lockdown happened. It's been fun. Thank you. Yeah, I was so excited. Like, oh, we'll bring him to the retreat. He can meet everybody. He's like, no. But yeah, anyways, my husband has type 1. He was diagnosed when he was like 6, and we've been together like 12 years. And yeah, definitely like my relationship with him and with diabetes like keeps changing every year. But in general, things are good right now. So nice to meet you, other supporter. I forgot your name, but 2 years in guy. Hi.
Awesome.
Are you West Coast? You look West Coast there.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm not originally, but I'm in Paulsbo, Washington, and we were in Seattle for the past couple years.
Nice.
Which I really missed, but not while everything's locked down. So out here in the burbs, not too bad. You can see the Olympic Mountains over to my right.
Beautiful. Looks nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys all in Seattle?
I'm in Bend, Oregon, near Maya.
Bend.
Oh, dude, Maya, when did you move to Bend?
Moved to Bend like 2 years ago.
What? That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, glad we're all caught up now. I'm gonna turn my camera off.
All right. Thank you for indulging us. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm in Bothell, Washington, suburb of Seattle. It's nice living in the burbs. I have an office with a door. But I do miss the hustle and bustle of the commuting into the city.
Me too.
All right. So I've got a list of questions that has been submitted. I guess what we can do is I'll read them off, and then those of us with BDs can go around and answer them. And when we've kind of exhausted that one, I'll move on to the next one. So our first one is pretty straightforward. How do you find your carb ratios? So myself, it was largely just kind of a result of trial and error. I worked pretty close with my endo, and we picked one to start with. And we chose a standard food. Packaged foods really helped with this one. You know, just kind of tested it. I have a Medtronic 670G thing here. And so dialing it in over time was largely a combination of picking, I think we started with like 8 all day, and then we looked at like my, lunchtime needed to be a little bit more aggressive, given that I was not able to, process those as quickly. But really working with my endo and looking at the data and smoothing them out and making small adjustments. That's how I do it.
Should I go next? I'll go next. Mine will be quick. I do things a little differently. I don't do carb ratio. I have a correction ratio, which is a different thing. And that's more like how much a unit of insulin is going to drop you. But I don't really do the whole carb counting thing. It doesn't work for me. I'm just very low carb, so I tend to eat kind of very similar meals from day to day, or like I have meals on rotation, and those are just meals that through trial and error, I just figured what is the right amount of insulin to take. And also the timing. Timing is a big thing, by the way. So it's not just about the carb ratio. You gotta know like your timing and just how sensitive to insulin you are in generally, and blah blah blah. So that's how I roll.
I'd say for me, it's a kind of a similar case to both of those. Guess and check is how it kind of started. Working with an endo, and I know I used to do a bunch of studies at the BRI. And setting your carb ratios is kind of like trying to raise a dog, or maybe raising a kid. I don't know, I've never done that, where every expert you see has a different opinion. And so like going to different doctors, they'd be like, well, let's tweak it this way. Let's tweak it this way. Why did you change it? So I would just kind of go with whatever felt was working at the moment. And then between the bouncing back and forth, eventually found the right medium ground. I'm also more of a streaky type of exerciser. So I'll go through periods when I might do a lot of running or biking, and then I'll go through periods like last couple of months where I have not done much at all, which can definitely change my rates. And so with that, it's again more a guess and check on my own of thinking, okay, well, I kept it steady. This happened. Let's reel it back for a week and see if that's going to change much. And yeah.
Right on, right on. Just to bring a question that came up from the chats. I don't know if the chat's recorded on video or not. That somebody was asked if I was looping. I use the Medtronic 670G hybrid closed loop. Works pretty well. My son also uses that. He's actually the one who convinced me to switch from my Dexcom Omnipod combo to that. I like it a lot. No, it's not for everybody. I hate the tube. It sucks. But my control is much better, and it works for my my situation. So the next question: if you could only tell me 3 things as a supporter of a person with diabetes, what would they be? This is a good question. I'm gonna answer as a. This is kind of complicated. I think it's really different as a parent versus like a adult supporter. I will say as a parent to another parent, your kid's gonna make mistakes, like a lot, and just help them figure out like how to adjust to them. You know, I forgot my blood sugar kit a lot. I even forgot it. I told the story the last time I did this. I left my blood sugar kit at home 2 years ago and had to have my wife bring it to me. And I'm a grown ass man, so you know, the kids are gonna make mistakes. Help them be the support and the trust that they need to go through that. 2. Yeah, I know that has a lot of carbs in it. I usually can figure out how that works for my body anyway. But you know, it also at the same time means a lot when somebody maybe wants to express their concern. Like I get, oh, you're concerned with me and I want to help you. So I appreciate that when people try to help you. And then the third one, I'll think about that. Somebody else go.
Should I go? I guess I can go. 3 things. First, be kind. And I know that you are. I know that you all mean well. But but man, like some days with diabetes are rough, okay? Like we live in our heads a lot. And it's like, it's hard to explain to somebody who is not type 1 sometimes what we go through. And it's really hard to express it with words. And so just sometimes you just have to kind of learn how to be really sensitive and how to read the room and to know when to ask questions, but also know when to sort of back away and just, and just be like, all right, you got it. I'm gonna go do something else, and I'm not gonna, it's like, it's such a delicate thing. Like you don't have to be walking around eggshells, but sometimes you just have to be like super sensitive to like the situation. Activities like when we're doing sports together, when we're hiking, when we're doing any sort of stuff like that, it can be a little bit more stressful and more involved to somebody with type 1, and we really have to like manage that like on the spot and be really reactionary. Just like be super patient with us, just understand like we just have these situations. It's not us, it's diabetes. We just have to like take care of this right now and no delay kind of thing. And just sort of like know when to back away, but also know when to like reach out. And so I know it's a lot. I don't know, 3 things. I feel like that kind of covers 3 things. I think that's a big
Maybe as panelists we should have chosen 1.
Yeah.
I really like your exercise thing. That's really important too. Every activity takes an extra 20 minutes on either end of it.
Yep. Yeah, and we're gonna take longer, seriously, even just to get ready in the morning, and like all the crap we have to remember. Like before we leave the house, we have a million things we have to like. We have a list of stuff that we're like going through, like this checklist. It really is a lot. So just understand.
Do you actually have a checklist by chance? Like not just a mental one, but do you all actually use your like a pre-flight checklist, like a pilot taking off? Like do you literally have a fix?
Max and I have one for camping. Like we have like all of our like in vacations, like all of your stuff you need to pack, like clothes or like the camp stove, and then we have all the diabetes stuff. And especially if you're camping, like all the backup, like like pens or needles or whatever if your pump fails, something like that.
Yeah, we have a similar, like for big trips, for like, going out the door. I've got my kind of standard, pocket pat, and then I usually wear like cargo dad shorts or hoodies with pockets, and I'll tap those and make sure I've got everything.
Yes, pockets. I don't have like a physical list. Mine is like more of a mental, but I do have like a whole kit that's already packed with like extra of everything. And so if we go camping, if we go wherever where it's like going to be overnight, I just grab it. Like it's almost like I don't have to repack it. I just grab that because I already have extra meter, extra test strips, extra whatever, extra glue for if stuff just falls off your body and you gotta, like all of that. So that made things really easy just to have it and just, okay, it's like a separate bag and I just grab it.
I don't think there's any avoiding the whole, like, even with a checklist, some days going out and realizing that you have 2 units left in your pump, you've got 5 minutes left in your Dexcom, you're not carrying your glucometer because you rely on the Dexcom 10 days, and you're just like, well, I feel like an idiot today. So I think that's also just part of it of like, I could have had a checklist, wouldn't have really saved me on this one probably.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it happens. I was on an international trip. I went to Paris for work, and I had I'm not really trying not to humble brag here, but I got a chance to eat at the Eiffel Tower, and I left my meter at the hotel. And so I was on the Omnipod at the time, so I just dialed in what I had and made it work, because there was no way I was gonna make it back in time. Alex, did you have any additional like pieces of advice you wanted to throw out there?
Sure. So, I mean, you guys had the main ones that I had. I think that the main point was going to be patience, because, I mean, when I have a high or a low, I might be a little bit more moody than usual. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate any input or things like that. Mainly on the exercise thing, too, that's a really key point, that patience during the exercise, and then outside that, flexibility in knowing that the last minute plans that might come together for a lot of people aren't really an option for us, of like, oh, I wanted to do a workout in the next 15 minutes. Oh, well, I'm 250 right now, trying to come down, so I've got 5 units on board. I can't exercise with 5 units on board because I'll drop 300 points in 10 minutes. So I can't exercise for the next 2 hours until that clears, and then I can start to think about that. So just being patient there. And then I'll give a third point. If we've bolused for a snack, do not try to take some of that snack. That is my snack now. You can get, yeah, no stealing any parts of my snack if I'm bolused for that. I'll bite your hand.
We've had to do that with we've bolused for, this is for my kid, I'll use that example again, where it's like, no, those are T's chips. I will get you some chips, just don't take those.
Yeah.
There's a question that came up that's a good one. We can talk briefly about how we handle exercise, highs and lows. Any advice? The patience is definitely one thing. Exercise takes at least 50 minutes to prepare. For myself, because I'm using the system, I have like the temp target option, which basically says, hey, don't be quite so aggressive on the basal rate. If I basically have to schedule my exercise, probably pretty similar to what you do, Alex. We recently got an indoor exercise bike. I've really been liking that. So I wake up and then, immediately do that temp target, and then go do the stuff downstairs so that I can give my body time to come up a little bit. As for lows, like everybody else, I carry 100 grams worth of glucose on my person at basically all times. Usually, my personal favorite, I don't know where it is, Goo Chews. So I have celiac too, so gluten-free. But the Goo Chews are 4 grams and about that big, and they work if you just stick it in your mouth and you can't chew. So I like those.
Yeah, I'm all for liquid glucose. When you exercise and you have a low and you wanna raise your blood glucose fast, you want the liquid stuff. That stuff is really, it's just so concentrated, and because it's liquid, it's just. And the other thing I learned, if you have glucotabs or anything like that, you put it like right here inside your mouth, like in between your gums and your cheek. It's just a really fast absorption over there. You just like put that stuff over there. So yeah, glucose. Don't do anything else. I know some people say chocolate. I'm like, no, chocolate has fat. You guys, fat slows down the absorption of glucose in your body. So I know some people love to indulge when they're, like hypoglycemic, and I get it, but this is not a situation to indulge. Like, that stuff can get nasty really fast. Like, you don't want to delay any absorption. You want the fastest glucose ever. So it's good to just have a lot of glucose on you during exercise. And I also, the other thing is, I gave Neil, my husband, he now has the glucagon. It's not on me anymore. Like, I mean, we have multiple glucagons now, but like, he has the glucagon because we're together. So it's like, it doesn't help me to have the glucagon if I'm not able to administer it. So that's something to remember. Yeah, he also has glucose, by the way. So I just like, you have that, and if I need help, you got it. So.
As far as exercise, I'm a choosy, low blood sugar treat type person, no matter what the exercise is doing. So I will often have an arsenal of different types of things. For hiking, I'll take probably like 4 times the amount of food everybody else does, as anybody on this would. but I've got it stored in different places. So I know that like, oh, my fruit snacks are on my hip belt. I've got similar to like the goo chews. I carry like some Cliff shot blocks. I know those are going to be like up here. I'll have applesauce in one corner. I'll have Gatorade or like a Cliff bar, and I'll be like, what kind of low is this? Well, I think this is a Cliff bar low, where it's not low, it's like kind of hovering. So I just need to get something else to stabilize it and bring it up a little bit. So it kind of depends on that. And then I think the main thing for keeping in mind as you're exercising is that whatever works right now, ride it, figure out what works now. It doesn't mean it's going to be working in a year, 2 years, whatever. I've done enough endurance things over the last 8-10 years that what was working for me 8 years ago as a newly type 1 didn't work at 5 years, doesn't work at 7 years, definitely doesn't work now. So training for the same event can be very different 3 years apart. So it's really just about slowly building, finding things you're comfortable with and they're working at the time, and riding it until it doesn't work anymore.
I just wanted to introduce myself. I got in a few minutes late. My name is Andrew. I have T1D. From the conversation I gather, you're talking about just exercise and what to take with you. I have a couple of things that I always take with me. One of them is powdered dextrose, which is basically just like pure glucose powder. And as you know, someone who's trying to go out there and hike for, you know, a full day or more, multiple days, like for me, the biggest thing is taking things with me that don't take a lot of space. So rather than taking those granola bars and stuff like that, I take the powdered dextrose and I mix that with a little bit of water. You can buy like a 30-pound jug or 30, I don't know, liter jug on Amazon for like $20, and it lasts me. I've been T1 for 5 years, and I still have the first one that I bought. The other thing I buy is called Perpentum, and basically what it is a it is basically just a drink that has a crap ton of carbs in it. I mean, 2 scoops of this powder has like 70 carbs. So if I'm ever out of like legitimate food, that's something I can also mix with water, and I can sustain myself for, you know, hours and hours with that. So just bring a water bottle, your Camelback, and just for me, you know, obviously all the goodies like everyone he said, goo, jelly beans, honey, that kind of stuff, glucose tabs, and then just those 2 extra items for me are always kind of my insurance.
Andrew, is that the stuff made by Hammer? Is that like the white packet with yeah, that stuff's great, but it's a live culture. And so if you leave that in a water bottle for longer than like a day in hot weather, good God, it's throwing that thing away.
Right. Yeah. I carry it in little tiny baggies with me, Ziploc bags, you know, and then I just I have a collapsible water bottle. And then if I just need one of those 2 things, I just mix it up real quick, take a little shot of that, and then, you know, not keep it mixed. But yeah, it's crazy. You know, you drink that and it's like eating a big old bowl of pasta. It's very carb intensive, but I feel like that's got me through several situations where I've stayed out longer than I thought I was, or someone spontaneous came up with the idea to do, you know, an extra this or that. And, you know, it gave me a little bit of insurance.
Nice. All right. I'm going to move on back to the pre-recorded ones. What I got next? Okay, this is a good one. And I have an opinion about this one. My child is an adult with T1D and doesn't let me see their CGM information anymore. How can I convince them to let me see it? I'm going to say that is a really personal decision between you and your child. I don't let my mom see my information. I would let my wife see it now, mostly because I don't care. But it's kind of like a very intensely personal thing. I had a flippant response that I feel kind of bad about, but it's like, would you want your parent to know when you were going through some like minute by minute crazy hormonal thing? And I could say, like, I would not feel comfortable with that. So And now I'm thinking of that as a parent of my kid. I hope he lets me see it as long as we can. But if there's going to be a point at which he's like, Dad, I think I got it. And I hope that I will, have the confidence in him to accept that.
Yeah, before I comment further on it, I just wanted to say that, yeah, it's an intensely personal thing. And I think there could be like steps. So maybe if the child is not willing to let the parent see, maybe it's a best friend, or maybe it's, an aunt or someone like that, because that's better than nothing. For me, really the only way that I actually allowed my parents to see at one time my data was to be with them while I gave them the settings that I wanted them to see. So I did not want my parents to see my actual graph, because I didn't want them seeing how I was for the last 4 hours or whatever. And also I only wanted them alerted if I was below like 60 for 30 minutes. I don't want them, calling me every time I'm 60, because, as it's frustrating when you're low and having to deal with that. And then the other thing too is that I really think that at some point in a diabetic's life, they try to become independent regardless of the people around them. So I think this dependency on yourself, on the control over your diagnosis, is like what kind of gives me strength personally. So at least for the parents, our SOs, to just kind of understand that to the best of their ability and try to be understanding and try to kind of ease into that process. So sharing the data, I think is a big thing for me.
I think, Nick, you have such a unique perspective because you have type 1 and yet your kid has type 1. So like you probably understand as a parent how important it is for you to like follow your kid's Dexcom or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the big the big word in her question was that her child is not a child. Like
it was an adult. The question is worded as an adult.
And I'm like,
yeah,
it's like, I think it's like as a parent, at some point you just have to learn to like let that bird fly from away.
Yeah, I mean it's
like, it's like at some point your kid's no longer a kid, like they're an adult and they're gonna manage their diabetes by themselves. And I think it could be
that's basically what we're training them for.
Yeah, like I think that the thing about showing or like sharing your graph, like sure it has that purpose of like in case of an emergency, somebody could like see it right away and be notified and call you. But if you're an adult and you feel like, hey, I have this, I have this together, like I have a grip over, like I know what I'm doing. I get the notifications. I know when I'm gonna go low. And I'm taking care of myself, then it's fine. Like there should be like a trust kind of thing where it's like, I know how to handle myself.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't really currently share my graph with anyone. Like I'll show screenshots sometimes, like if I want to discuss certain things with people, like specific people, right? Or like with my physician, but I don't have anybody follow me or anything like that. It's just weird. It's personal. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know, you don't show your underwear in public kind of thing. It's like, it's just, hey, I got it. I don't know. Nobody really needs to see it all the time.
Yeah, Christopher mentioned in the chat, he has a very good point. I was going to mention that too. That SugarMate is a great option for maybe if your child is not allowed you to follow. An app like SugarMate would have kind of the security blanket as far as if your child goes low, they have a live person or somebody there to call that person and let them know. So that could be a great kind of bridge between maybe first allowing SugarMate, then the parent, or maybe just only SugarMate or whatever it is. But that's a great option just for safety.
I can see that. I'm an engineer, a software engineer by trade, and I can see like the on-call analogy of Paige, you know, the primary, which would be myself, and then if like I'm not responsive or whatever, then escalate to a trusted person if that's your parent. I could see that as a decent compromise, even as an adult. Like I would want my wife to know if my thing's been alarming and I haven't responded to it in 20 minutes. That actually sounds pretty cool. But like seeing the graph, please no. That's my graph. Alex, anything to add, or should we move on?
I think you guys covered it pretty well. I wouldn't have anything more to add. I think you guys got it.
I got one thing. So Bria has two wonderful stepfather and biological father, great dads. And one thing I noticed, and even though it doesn't really qualify for a child, I think just moving to another age bracket, but what I found about her parents and what they did, and it's obviously very personal. It's also very specific to the parent. I'm not this way, but her dads were like coaches on the sideline. They would look at her stats and be like, great job today. It looked like you're killing it. Or this week looked fantastic. Look, you're doing great. And then on days where it was just, she just, you know, just screwed it up, man. It was a bad day. It was an effort day. It was, hey man, you know, we're just gonna eat carbs today because it's so out of whack. Nothing she could do. So for those kind of days, you know, her dads were more like, hey, you know, really sorry. It looks like you're having a tough day, you know, as opposed to being more empathetic, as opposed to being more parental. Like, what are you doing instead of that? And that approach, I think, could really be applicable to a parent that's struggling, but it's such a conditional change, right? And it requires trust of that child, really hard. So just so you know, I mean, I can see where my parenting style is bad from that perspective, but other parents, if you really want to, you're gonna have to learn to be that way, I think.
It's I'll comment that I think that the coaching and the supportive nature of it, I could see that being a positive, but it would so I looked at it. Now I'm thinking about my own parenting style actually, and like so much of it right now, he's very young, and so a lot of it's about control. Shifting from the control to the support and coach, if it works, you know, that sounds then that sounds like a great thing, and frankly, what an awesome relationship to have with your parents. So that's really cool. But yeah, I think it's really just an intensely personal thing, and it would just be really rough for me. I don't know. I love my mom and I love my dad, and I would have a very hard time letting him into that level at this point. Okay.
I just want to add one thing really quickly is I would, as the parent, encourage them to find someone that they can share it with.
Sure.
A friend, someone who can see that data, you know, finding a diabesity, whatever. And if it's someone who also has type 1 and you can share data together, there's some camaraderie in that, and some, you know, I know some people who they look for when they both have 100, right? And they try and like screenshot when both of them have 100 for their blood glucose, right? So they make it sort of a game within this thing called life that we're living, right? So whether that, you know, is you or not, I think ultimately it's about helping them be supported and someone who is there when they're struggling, right? And that may not be you, but it can be someone else who cares about them that they trust as well, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, finding the someone you can trust. It's really crucial, and it's I guess judgment free. It's just really hard like I said, now I'm putting on my parent hat. It's hard not to apply judgment to situations, and so yeah. Okay. All right, this next one. Okay, have you been infected with COVID, and what was your experience? No, that I am aware of.
I only got tested because I was exposed directly to a person and tested negative. And that's because we're very careful. We're outside, kept distance, and so don't have personal experience being sick with it.
Yeah.
So I will preface this with saying, just as with type 1, your experience may vary. We can all do the same things and it will be different. So, and you can do the same thing day to day and it could be different. All of that is to say, I don't have a confirmed case because when I had symptoms, it was beginning of March, and they refused to do testing because I didn't have severe enough symptoms for it. But when a week and a half later, I couldn't smell the curry that was in my face, I felt pretty confident that that I had COVID. I don't know any other illnesses that have that side effect with similar symptoms. So all of that is to say that my experience was a more mild case. I think the most difficult thing for me, other than not being able to smell or taste my food for a period of several days, was that I was just exhausted. I was so tired. And you know, I have a toddler at home, and my husband was sick at the same time, and trying to take care of my toddler and manage living with type 1, which you know, it's estimated that as someone living with type 1, we make an additional 60 decisions specific to type 1 diabetes every day. It was exhausting. So people have asked, like, well, what did your blood glucose look like during that time? What happened at the same time is I moved my insulin pump to locations that I had never previously put my insulin pump before and hadn't done any injections in those areas either. So it's hard for me to say what the impact to my blood glucose was because I was getting basically like brand new sites where my absorption would be better. So my blood glucose was fairly as I would expect for normal, not being sick. Again, everything's made up and the points matter. So your experience may vary. I have heard, you know, from others that their blood glucose did other things, but that's my experience. And I'm really grateful that it was not any worse than it was, but it was more than a week of just feeling like I had no energy to do anything. So. Oh, and I will add, if you don't have a pulse oximeter, just get one. Just get one. It goes on your finger. If you go to the doctor, it's a little thing they put on your finger that measures your pulse ox. It's one of the best ways that if you do get sick, you can monitor your own oxygen levels, and you know, your healthcare provider can tell you what to look for. We were given instructions as to what we should look for and when we should seek additional support. And we got close to that point, but we didn't get to the number that they said. So we didn't seek additional help. But I would just say that's one of the simplest things that you can do and have in your home in the event that you do get sick. I'd rather have it now than wait.
We also got a portable one, those little things that go right there.
Yeah, I think being prepared as a type 1 for like anything is key, right? So I never got COVID, but in 2011 I did get swine flu that was really, really bad, that did lead to me being hospitalized due to it, and that wasn't fun. And but it was a learning experience, right? Like I learned since then to always be prepared and just have things in the house. And also I've been getting my flu shot ever since, because until then I was like skipping, you know, and I wasn't, you know, and of course that was a year that I skipped. So I've been getting my flu shot, but like, so now I have things in the house that I have like, I forget what they're called, but they're like these pills that you take in case if you are vomiting really badly, and they just stop the vomiting right there and they dissolve. And so it's just something that I read that you should just have in your house if you have type 1, because we are so prone to getting so dehydrated when we're sick. And of course, dehydration and ketoacidosis, you know, all kind of go hand in hand. So you want to be able to always take in fluid. So I talked to my endocrinologist and I was like, hey, can I just have this at home just in case? And he was like, sounds good. And so now I have it. So when I was, before I was hospitalized, when I have swine flu, I was just vomiting so much that I could not take any water in at all. Obviously could not eat. I think I fasted for like 5 days straight, but I just could not take anything in. And I could not control my blood glucose levels. I couldn't bring it down. It's just severely insulin resistant. And so you know, it was just a bad situation. So ever since I learned, okay, even when you're sick, you still keep taking your insulin, even if you're not eating at all, like keep taking your insulin, like that's not out of the, you know, and I learned that you can develop, you can get into ketoacidosis pretty quick, even, you know, like I never went over 250. And yet I still, you know, so it's like, it's a matter of like, you want to be able to bring down your blood glucose levels. So like, Neil knows how to give me an insulin shot, like, you know, like into my muscle that will bring my blood glucose down quick. Because when you inject into a muscle, it brings your blood glucose levels down a lot faster. It's for emergency only. Like, it's not something I would do on the daily, but I told him, I was like, here's where you give it. And we did a test run one time, and, you know, and I was like, in case I'm not capable of doing this myself, here's how you help me. And, you know, and he knows how to test my blood sugar level, and he knows how to do all those things. So he basically could potentially take over in case if I'm like so sick that I can't. So it's just being prepared, I think, is like a big thing always.
So it's clarified in chat, the medicine that you were talking about with the anti-nausea Zofran, also known as ondansetron.
Yes.
Just for anybody in the recording to know that.
Yes. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
We have kept some from previous just like stomach illnesses that I'm definitely going to follow with my endo as to keep on hand. Because yeah, that's rough to go through. And you know, as everything else, sorry about the dog.
Oh yeah, the ketone, yes, Brianna said the ketone blood meter. Yes, it's, I think the blood meter is a lot more accurate than checking in your urine. So I think they now recommend doing the only problem is the test strips are really, really expensive. But you know, it's for emergency only, right? Like you only test for ketones if you're very sick, your blood sugar levels are high, and you just want to know, hey, should I go into urgent care right now and get some fluids in me that way? So thank you.
All right. Next question. This is kind of very specific, so hopefully it'll be pretty quick. Are there any Medtronic 670 users planning to upgrade to 770 or switch to Tandem? I am a 670 user, and when the 770 comes out, the answer is yes. Just because I have, like most diabetics, if you're fortunate enough to have a stockpile, I have two people in the same system, so we have a ton of stuff. So unless that all decides to change, I will be upgrading.
I'm currently on the Tandem T-Slim, which I've been on for about 4 years. I used to be on a Medtronic, but long before there was any integrated system. And I know that Tandem has had an integrated system for a while now. It sounds cool. I've tried to get on it. There's been some kind of disconnect between my endo and Tandem for 3 years, so still waiting on that. But I hear both systems are great. That's, I guess, my only toss in, that you find one that feels best for you. I know people that have defended both very strongly. So if you like one, then that's great.
Yeah, I don't have any experience on Medtronic, but if anybody has questions about the Tandem T-Slim, the Control IQ or the Basal IQ, I've used both of those, so definitely be happy to answer any questions about that.
All right. Next question.
Sorry, I know
Oh.
Brea uses one of those, right? Chris, she uses.
Yeah,
I don't know how much you're involved in the.
yeah, she's got the X Slim. Is that what it is? It's the Tandem.
Yep.
And she uses Control IQ or the other one, right?
I think she's on Control IQ now. What's the other version? There's another
Basal
Basal.
IQ.
I don't remember which one she's on right now. She's tried them both, and I think she's hoping in the next release they'll let her do something where she can move into some kind of hybrid mode where she can have both.
Okay, so she's on Basal IQ then. She probably doesn't have Control IQ. Once you get Control IQ, there's no going back to Basal IQ.
Yeah.
And that's kind of puts some people off, but just as a testament to, you know, how happy I am with it. Obviously, people are supportive of whatever works.
Yes.
Something that saves your life. So it doesn't matter what it is, you know, if it's Medtronic, like you love that thing with your entire heart. And if you're on Tandem and it works for you, then,
yeah,
you know, you feel the same way. But one thing I've noticed with my, it on the Tandem X Slim or whatever, T-Slim. The Basal IQ really cut down on my lows. Like a heck of a lot. And then the Control IQ really, I almost say eliminated lows. I mean, I would say I've probably had 4 lows in the last 3 months or something like that, like legitimate lows, like not just like I'm kind of low, but just actual lows. So 60 or less probably. Yeah, it's really great. I saw a question earlier, Christopher, that you put in there about how to get over the fear of lows. And honestly, this system is kind of helped me with that. I think it just comes with experience to get over that fear. And then also for me, one of the biggest things was I was always afraid to go to sleep. I wasn't necessarily, well, I was afraid to go to sleep because I didn't know it was going to happen. And of course I had my alarms, but I think every diabetic knows after you hear like the 20th alarm in one night, it doesn't matter anymore. Like you don't hear them anymore. They're out of your mind.
You get alarm fatigue.
Right, exactly. But with Control IQ, turning off the basal to the extent it does, I mean, it almost works too good sometimes. But yeah, every night I go to sleep and I wake up exactly 100. Very little dawn phenomenon. So it works really good, but that just really allowed me to go to sleep without worrying.
Yeah, I'd say that the Medtronic system, the 670 is the Control IQ equivalent, the 630 is the Basal IQ equivalent. Myself, I did Dexcom and Omnipod for years, and so I had to do this all manual. The Dexcom alarms helped. I felt my lows from a young age. I still have like low awareness. I get really shaky and I can tell. My wife has also picked up on my cues. Apparently I breathe heavy. Who knew? So, you know, but having these systems really does put a peace of mind, both as someone who has it and as, you know, like my kid is the one who actually got the 670 first. And switching, it's like watching his experience and just the amount of assurance that it gave us that the system would handle those, you know, like it blunts that low pretty well. We don't experience them much anymore. I say that, and I actually had a really bad low just last night. I did not count carbs correctly. Happens. But in general, I would say my experience since I've got on the system largely mirrors Andrew. They are very infrequent. And with the automatic, extra basal adjustment at the top, it really smooths out those, just day, depending on what time of day it is and what the phases of the moon are and stuff like that, it kind of smooths a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah, one thing I would say real quick, sorry, I'll give everyone else a chance to talk.
Sure.
Is just with a Control IQ, the one thing I really use a lot is the sleep mode. And my endo criticizes me because I've stayed on the sleep mode for basically ever since I got the Control IQ. And the reason for that, for me personally, is that it allows you to have like a lower target and allows you to kind of manage a little bit better and kind of manage your range a little better. So the Control IQ, for some people, it cuts off a little bit too early, and maybe it avoids that low, but maybe you start going high after that. So with the low, the lower target on the sleep mode, it really manages it really well for me.
I had a question for either of you guys using either system. I know when I just linked my CGM to my tandem, battery life went from like 6 days to like 2 days. Is that the same when you've got basal IQ, Control IQ, or whatever the other one is?
Are you referring to the pump battery or the CGM battery?
Pump battery.
Okay.
Yes. I called Tandem and I was like, something's wrong with my pump. Like this, like my battery only lasts a third what it used to. And they ran their automated tests on their side and they said, nope, based on how much insulin you take and the way Control IQ is working, that's what it is. So yes, it will be reduced.
For the 670, we don't really have an option. Well, I guess we do, but I frankly wouldn't bother to use this without the hybrid closed loop thing, so I don't have a comparison. It eats batteries all the time. I will say the CGM, we've had a challenge with my son because Medtronic CGM requires you to recharge it, which I hate with the passion of anything I can hate something about. Compared to the Dexcom, that's just drives me crazy. Anyway, the battery lasts very short times. Like it's supposed to last a week, and it was lasting 2 to 3 days. We had a 2.4 gigahertz camera / audio monitor in his room, and when we turned it off, that helped quite a bit. So look out for RF interference if you're noticing drained batteries on some of your devices. And unfortunately, everything runs on 2.4, so good luck. But that was a fun experiment for a few weeks.
So for the fear of lows, is that like the type 1 is fearing lows, or is it the partner or support person that has a fear of lows? Because I think we're all kind of like answering as like, oh, well, if this is how we handle lows, but who is more fearful? Because I feel like that might change the answer a little bit.
Yeah, my question was really around. So I know Bria struggles with being a new T1, and being that she has a lot of information available around the science and the physiology of it all. I think it instills a lot of fear, right? She knows the stats, she knows statistics. She used to see these things in the hospital. So there's a lot of fear there, and justifiably so. I'd have the same approach. So really I was trying to target this kind of area of things like when she goes on a hike by herself. I mean, that's going to be a short hike because she's not comfortable being out by herself anymore. She's afraid of being alone. And so I've tried to put things around her to kind of prop her up and help her. An SOS device, make sure you have extra sugar, etc. So all those rescues are really important, and all these things I think help. But is there anything that you do in your own psyche or mindset? Is there a meditation practice? Is there a shaman you speak to? What do you do to get through that fear barrier? To be independent.
I think Nick said that a lot of it comes from experience. Like you sort of learn your own body, like, you know, your own body, and like you become like super sensitive to going low and like the very, very subtle things before you're even really low, that they're just so subtle. But you know, like for me, for example, I can just feel all of a sudden tired or get a headache or things like that are just not normal for me. And like also if I'm really tired in the middle of the day, or I'm like kind of weirdly headachy, I check my blood sugar level. Like I don't care what the Dexcom says, I test, you know, because I've had incidents in which like, yeah, I was like, the Dexcom was showing I'm like perfectly 85 or something, but I'm actually like 60, you know? And so it's just like very, very subtle. You just learn to really trust your body and like what it's telling you, and just be like super kind of like, you know, in tune with your own body and like stuff like that. And then having somebody who, you know, you can call really helps. I think having like the sugar mate option, I think is awesome, where like it can just like dial somebody. I think that's really, really important. Or somebody that follows you, that you just know, like, even if you're physically alone, you're not really alone. Like somebody could reach out to you. It's really important. Another thing is, yeah, always be prepared, always have glucose, always have whatever you need to treat. And then what else? I think those are really like the big things. And just sort of like, it just takes time, knowing that it's just, it is, because, you know, it's new right now, but you do learn how to like trust yourself and to like feel it out. And
How long did it take you?
oh my God. I mean, that's the problem, is like I've been type 1 almost all my life. So I really, I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like such a, it's so integrated into me that I don't know when I picked it up, you
Right.
know. I just know that also, like feeling the like lows, there will be like new things all of a sudden, like new symptoms also, like at some point all of a sudden I felt like my lips were going numb, and that was totally new. I never had that before. And like you just have to experience and be like, wait a minute, this is new. And then anything that feels off slightly, you just learn, like, I don't care what Dexcom says, I'm going to check my blood sugar level, because Dexcom has been known to sometimes be off. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. And so you just, anything that just feels off, like any sort of feeling that is just slightly off, you're like, what's my blood sugar level? I'm just going to check. So stuff like that. Another thing that I had, I mean, I understand still like the fear of like low anxiety. It's really, really scary. Like I think I'll speak to the women in the group. Women also have hormones. Hormones really affect blood glucose level. Like,
No women have hormones.
oh my God, no, it's, you guys don't even know what kind of,
I know.
like, what happens with hormones. But they really do. And like you can get some weird stuff happen, like, you know, around that time of the month even. And like, so I get like weirdly insulin sensitive random, it's not random, I learned that it has to do with my cycle, right? But it feels like it's random. It's almost like I grew a pancreas all of a sudden overnight. Like I swear, it's like after 34 years, sometimes it feels like the old thing there all of a sudden just like it's alive, and I'm like, what is happening? So that can give me weird anxiety, because it's like if I'm going low for a whole day and I'm taking glucose and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. There's really not much I could do right now. I just write it out. But there was one time specifically that I was afraid to go to sleep. I was up on my phone, I swear, all night, sitting there with liquid glucose and like making sure that Neil had both types of glucagon, like the spray, the nasal spray one and the shot, right next to, he was asleep. He had a great night of sleep, and I was just like, I'm scared. I'm too scared to sleep, and because I don't know. You know, like it's just gonna happen. Those things are just gonna happen, and you just have to write it out sometimes and just accept that it's like, okay, like it's out of the norm, but sometimes it just happens and you just roll with the punches, you know?
I think that last bit for me, at least, is something I have to repeat to myself a lot, both as a caregiver and for myself. There's to kind of more directly address your question about like how do you prepare. I also have grown up with it. I was 7 when I was diagnosed, and so I don't really know any different. A thing that I do for like new things, I'm very much a planner, is I will plan something and then like we'll up the ante, so to speak, to build myself into that confidence. For example, I really wanted to start. I want to ride the Seattle to Portland bike ride. So it's like a goal I have. I got diagnosed with celiac and kind of threw all that off, but we'll skip back to like what I was doing to prepare myself for that. I started riding 20 to 30 mile bike rides with a friend, so that I had the backup support, but also had carrying the day's worth of carbs with me, and just learning what it is that would feel like, and what it would feel like to be mentally and physically exhausted as well, and learning like how to deal with that, but also with a friend that I trusted that would help me work through that. And then I went on a bike ride like that by myself, sort of having prepared like, okay, I know basically what this will feel like. I sort of know what my body's going to do, but always being reminded that there is going to be some amount of unknown. How much of that unknown am I comfortable like taking on myself? And like, I wasn't going out to the a place where I wouldn't be supported. This was like a Cascade bike ride. Like they have people that will come and check on you. So, but I was still by myself, right? So like just finding that is really a unique journey, I think, for everybody.
I would say for myself, so this November will be my seventh anniversary. And I really struggle with the anxiety and the fear of going low. And for me, it actually got worse several years ago, after my son was born. And one of my struggles is that I have hypo-unawareness. I don't feel my lows until they're really low. I don't get, like, typically I don't get shaky until my blood glucose starts to come back up from a low. And I'm very lucid when I'm low. I remember I was, I think at 36 or something, and I was working at a school at the time, and I went to the nurse's office because I knew that I was low and I didn't want to be alone. So I went to the nurse's office, and her son actually has type 1 as well. And I was just talking to her because I didn't want to be alone. And she mentioned, she's like, I can't believe that we're having this conversation right now. And so that's part of why for me, it's so, I'm so challenged by that, and honestly have fear around it because I don't feel my lows as much. And like I can feel very, very comfortable at 60 and not notice any differences in my body. And so that's why I really fought for a CGM for myself. And I'm really fortunate that I have one, and that our insurance covers that, and that we can pay for what insurance doesn't cover. And I know that that's not available for everyone, but that really helps me. And it is helpful to my spouse as well, because they can see that information too. One thing that I do when I am low is I keep talking. I don't stop talking until I'm in a safe range, because I don't feel them, and I am so lucid. I want whoever is with me to know when something changes. So I'll just talk about like whatever until I'm in a safe range. And one thing that I do also is, especially at night, my husband works late, he works overnight, and so I'll call a friend. I'll do a video chat with a friend or with my sister, and I'll just say, you know, hey, I'm low, and I'll tell them, this is the insulin that I have on board, this is where my blood glucose is, this is where it's trending, and we just sit and we talk until I feel that I'm in a safe spot. And for me, just having those people in my life that I can just call, like either on the phone or over a video chat, whether I share my data with them or not, is really, really helpful for me. And yeah, I mean, so those are some of the tools that I have used. The other thing that I want to mention too is, if you are able, I highly encourage anyone who is living with type 1 or, you know, is a supporter of someone to type 1 to seek counseling. Because the thing is, living with a chronic illness is hard. Supporting someone with a chronic illness is very, very hard. And it is just, it becomes like that third person almost in your relationships. You know, whether they're romantic or otherwise, it doesn't matter. Finding someone that you can just talk this through and what you're experiencing is so important. And someone who is not biased to your situation. So if that's a licensed professional, awesome. If that's groups like this, awesome. I encourage both of them, but just getting connected so that you can talk through these things is so important.
Let's see. I think actually, I'm gonna go ahead and, Chris, you just asked this question. I think this ties right into what we were just talking about. Do you think a strict regimen helps, or is it just a false crutch? So I'm gonna answer for myself, and this is just me. I think that this disease has a lot about. Hey, kiddo. Sure. You're on camera and being recorded, so hello. All right. It's my daughter Sophie. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. All right. Thanks, kiddo. This you know, there's a lot of control. Yeah, she does. Every time I walk by, she gives in hugs. So I'm pretty sure every one of her teachers now has seen that. Control. So this disease is a lot about control, right? And so there's a lack of control in many areas of it, and so we try to control what we can. I get that inclination quite a bit as someone who likes to be in control of things. I think that for some people, if you follow very strict regimens and that works for you, if it gives you both that control or, you know, that validation that you need, without it becoming like a stick, particularly like if you're a caregiver, or you know, for yourself, if it's like actually starting to damage yourself because you're getting into like too much of that kind of thing, I think that's fine. I would certainly not judge anybody harshly if they were somebody who like measured everything and did like the tight meal control and all that. If that's what works for you, great. But I think accepting that, you know, you could do that for a week and it would just be the best week you've ever had, and then next week your body would change just enough and it'd go all crazy, and you're gonna have to figure it all out again. That's even more true as a kid, like trying to raise a kid with this. It's real, you know, their bodies change all the time. And so, you know, learning that there will never be perfect control, and learning to accept that was one of the hardest things I personally had to accept for both myself and as a parent. So I'm not quite sure if I answered the question, but that's my read on it anyway.
For me, I find lots of comfort in trying to be strict, but only up to the point where it's not damaging myself mentally. If I notice that, I see this pattern of me tying my blood sugar number to my happiness or something like that, then I know that it's time to like back off and just not go there. So for me, it's sometimes hard because we have a tendency to do that, to kind of have our mood altered by what our sugar's doing. And you could easily get in the cycle where maybe you're not taking care of yourself as good as you should, but then, you feel bad about it. And then, I don't know, just a cycle. So I try to be very strict, but yeah, it's not at the cost of my mental health.
Yeah, to just jump on that a little bit. I have here, but I was really strict. I think what both Nick and Andrew said are accurate. That as much as you can be strict within your own regimen, stick with that. My only thought is just beware of burnout. That if you push really hard to be strict for a while, it is very possible that you get really tired of it and then you kind of go back the other way. It's kind of like a diet. So just be mindful of that and make your systems work within that.
Yeah.
You made a statement earlier. I just want to make sure I get this before the time runs out. Sorry, Maya. You mentioned that every so often, every couple of years, things reset or change drastically to an extent where they're an impact. Would you say it's about every 2 years, every 3 years?
It's probably a bit. I mean, it's not too regular. I would think like my first 2 years are pretty stable, and then I had to change for 2 years, and then it was probably around 5 years, and then around 8 years. So maybe it's every 3 years. I don't know. It's probably going to change durations and stuff as I get further in. I'm still a relative noob in this with only 10 years in. We've got at least two 30-plus year veterans in here, so I'm sure they can also speak to that.
Yeah.
It's different for those of us who were diagnosed as children, because it's almost like the way the disease develops is very differently in children and adults. In children, it's very rapid destruction of beta cells. You almost lose all of them almost overnight. I didn't even have what we call what is it, like a honeymoon period, when you're basically like your beta cells almost regenerate, or like they recover somewhat for a little bit, like something like almost like a year. I've heard of some like even like for a few years. I never experienced that. So my diabetes, when it happened very fast. If you have more of like an adult onset type 1, like more of like a LADA, right? Like later autoimmune, that can happen where you basically still retain some beta cells. And so the destruction of them is really like, it could take years. I've heard of people even like decades. So it's just really different. And yeah, I can see it how you just have things change over time, right? And you just have to adjust. And I can see it being like, I don't think that there's like a time period. I think it could be like, maybe it's every year, maybe it's every 2 years, maybe it's every 3 years. It's just going to be such an individual response. But I think you just kind of have to accept it and just be like, just be on your feet, just be ready that like, hey, things are going to change. I mean, even for me, even though I've had this since I was 4, things change with seasons. I get seasonal changes. I know that with now fall, I'm going to have to change my insulin a little bit, like the weather and just not being as active. I drastically have to change my basal during summer months, because I'm just so much more outside and we're so much more like we're active. We're avid hikers. All of that has so much to do. So it's like you just sort of learn to fine tune like every now and then, and like and yeah, I know I said that before, but I kind of roll with the punches and just like, and it's that acceptance, it takes time. Like, I mean, I think when someone's like newly diagnosed, you're going through this like stage of grief, and especially those who were diagnosed as adults, I think it's even more severe, because you're you had a whole life before you had type 1, right? Like you never had to think about this. Like, I don't know what it's like to not ever think about this, right? Like, but if you've experienced life before and now all of a sudden you just have to completely do a 180 in the way that you handle life and yourself in the world, that's a lot to take in. That is just so much. And I think it's just a process, and you almost have to go through these like 5 stages of grief, and it could take time. And just kind of as a partner, I think to just allow that and just understand like, yeah, things are going to change, things are going to evolve. The good thing is that technology is constantly evolving as well. We have so many more ways of monitoring ourselves now than like when I grew up, when I was diagnosed, I was put on beef and pork insulin, and like there's no CGMs, there's none of that, it was very primitive back then. So, we have all these tools now, which is nice. And definitely your community is so important. Just knowing that I have other people with type 1 that I can reach out to, it's just changed my whole outlook, I think. It's just like you feel like you're not alone anymore. And I think having those people in your life, having that like person that has type 1 and like, you can call them, you can text them, like, hey, I'm having this kind of shitty time right now. And they'll listen and they'll understand and they won't judge. That's really important. And I think for supporters as well, to be able to reach out and be like, hey, it's hard on me right now. And like, I need that support as a person who supports, like, I think it's totally understandable. And that's why we're like doing what we're doing, is to like form that community and have that support in our lives.
Yeah. And I just want to, it is 7:31, so I want to respect everyone's time. And I want to say thank you so much to all of our panelists who came and spoke and shared, and to those of you who are supporters who are here talking and sharing with us as well. I just really appreciate everyone being here.